Welcome back to part 2 of our our podcast marketing react video from 2007. This is an ongoing series looking at a very old talk that I did from 2007 at PodCamp Toronto. Be sure to check out the previous episode. So let's go right back into it.
Again, that goes back to evangelism and social bookmarking services. How many people here use Delicious? Okay, Stumble Upon. Okay, good. Stumble Upon and Delicious is the two that we're going to focus on talking about.
Those services used to be huge. Dig and Delicious way back in the day. They're gone. They're gone.
So once you've got a visitor, you've used various tools to get a visitor to your site, you have to convert them to a listener. There are a number of ways to do that. The easiest way is to give them as many choices as possible within reason to listen to your show. You need to have multiple channels and deliveries. If you just have an RSS feed, if I tell my mom, no dig against my mom, hey, my show's got an RSS feed, she will look at me blankly and offer me another cookie. It's just not helpful. So things like iTunes, things like a Flash player built right into your homepage. Let me see if I can tab out of here without breaking the presentation.
Flash player. Oh, man. That part, though, is still true in that the delivery of your show is important. And one of the things you should be looking for these days is just using a good service, a service that will distribute your show to as many places as possible. The show that I use most of all is one called Libsyn. This is the In-Ear Insights podcast. You can see we have all the destinations in here: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Radio Public, Deezer, Amazon Music. And then as destinations become available, you can add them in and you can tune them up. So Samsung, Boom Play, et cetera, et cetera. All of these things are things that the service handles automatically. So I don't have to sit here and manually submit my show. In the old days, that was exactly what I had to do. And we all had to do this stuff by hand to each destination. So make sure that you're using a good podcast distribution service on the audio side. And then on the video side, YouTube for sure. Think about doing 60-second video snippets of your show because you're doing video, right? On TikTok, on Instagram, on YouTube as shorts. And there are services. Opus Clips is one that's very popular where you give it the full video file and it will produce the 30 or 60-second clips for you automatically. You may need to tweak it, but it's one way of creating those extra pieces of content that you can then distribute everywhere. It wouldn't be invented for another year after this talk, but my friend Todd Deffrin came up with what we call the content atomization strategy. Take your piece of content, video, for example, carve it up and distribute it in as many places as you possibly can. Old Twitter. That's when Twitter was still relevant.
What you want to have multiple calls to action, easy calls to action, and things that people are going to recognize. So for example, we have iTunes. We have Winamp. Winamp is a streaming and media MP3 player for the PC. 55 million users of it. Podcasting support in it is terrible, absolutely terrible. But if you can work your way into doing a one-click thing with it, it works really well. RSS, make sure that people have access to your MySpace page. Morpheus is one of the most popular file sharing programs online.
Back then, just talk about the old days, we had to, that's gotta sound like we had to walk uphill both ways to the snow, but back then we had to manually hand code our RSS feeds. It was not fun. These days, again, using any service, WordPress, your WordPress blog, you link it to an MP3 file, it will automatically generate the RSS feed, so you don't need to do that. But it's good to have that feed available. It is good to have links to the major social networking sites that if you've got active pages on them. Back in that ancient days of podcasting, MySpace was a viable channel. MySpace was to social media then what Facebook is to social media now. It's still got the largest number of users, so it's definitely a place to go. I am also highly amused at the fact that my desktop there, this is 2007, some of those programs still exist. Keynote, BB Edit, which is the software editor, text editor that I used to have to do everything in. That Duck is CyberDuck. That is an FTP client, still exists today. So even though this is 17 years later, there's still some recognizable friends there.
At least among college kids, because colleges and universities cannot block it. It also has podcasting support built into it, which is very nice. So make sure you have lots and lots of different ways for people to take action to listen to your show. If I go to the other side of the screen here, that did not work. Buggery. Make sure you have lots of different ways for people to listen to your show. That's how you convert them to a listener. You make it so easy. You make it one click. If it takes more than one click for someone to listen to your show, they're not going to listen to it. Make things like feed blitz. If you use FeedBurner, there are things where your RSS feed, your show's feed, can be turned into an email. This is surprisingly popular. 30% of my audience gets my show by email. Sir?
Yeah, I've heard rumors that you can actually put a file in a PDF. What is that called?
I would guess putting the file inside of a PDF. I don't actually know.
RSS feeds can incorporate PDF documents in them. So if you link up a PDF as a media enclosure, it will show up in most podcast players. They will not be able to play it, so you will see it in Apple Podcasts as a downloadable file, but like Spotify won't work. So your best bet is putting that on your own website. It is also funny that back then, I clearly did not know how to use multiple windows on a computer. That, by the way, is a Macintosh. I believe it's the PowerBook G4. So this predates the MacBook. That's how old this is.
I've not tried it yet, but now I'll...
Yeah, you can do it. I find it quite cool. Supposedly you can put a video.
I know you can put video inside of PDFs, but I don't know if they're self-contained or if they need to be referenced somewhere. I'll have to try it when I get home.
Oh, they were asking if you could put audio files inside of a PDF. Why would you do that? Why would you do that? Weird.
Turning listeners into subscribers is your next step. So once you get somebody to listen to the show, number one thing, of course, is going to be content. That's kind of a given. Make sure you have calls to action inside of your show, because these are MP3 files for the most part, which means that people will share them. And that's what you want. But if there's no way to for them to know what it is they're listening to or how to get to it, they'll listen to it. They'll go, that was really cool, and not necessarily find you again. So make sure.
Nobody shares MP3 files. I'm not sure anyone shared MP3 files back then. But nobody does that today. What people do share are links. They share links to a Spotify list. They share links to an Apple Music list. So make sure that you are on those services. And it is a good idea in the in-show call to action. That is still a good idea. You should be telling people within your show, please share this episode with your friends. Please share it on your social media profiles. Please email this show to people. And again, this is where having that audible domain name comes in handy. You can say, hey, tell your friends to go to trustinsights.ai/TI podcast, or tell your friends to go to marketingovercoffee.com.
You say in your show somewhere, hey, you've been listening to the Financial Aid Podcast. Get more at financialaidpodcast.com, and they'll know what to do after that. Again, making things one click as easy as possible. How many people here use the podcast with iTunes? Okay, good. How many people have a one-click subscribe on your website if you have a podcast? Okay, where does it go? Somebody raise their hand. Tell me where that click goes. What happens?
Just pops open. Well, first of all, it loads up iTunes. If you don't have iTunes already installed, then it prompts you to download it. Then it goes to the iTunes directory and right to your page where the listener can actually preview all the episodes and also subscribe.
Okay. You just described was an HTTP link to the URL is phobos. Something on Apple.
Yep.
That's sometimes good. It's sometimes good because that uses Apple's directory, which has been known to lose podcasts, to be significantly delayed. There's another way of doing it.
Right.
It's called ITPC. It's like HTTP, but ITPC instead. ITPC and then the URL to your feed. That will pop it directly into iTunes, make it open up that way.
That's a pain in the butt. That has changed substantially since those days. The way it works today, if you want to share an episode, just go to your Apple Podcast player or Spotify or whatever, and just click on the little 3-button thing there and just say share this episode. And you'll have the ability to drop it, to just send the link, to text it to somebody. Way less trouble than it used to be. This is the early days when this stuff was not very smooth or very, very well thought out by the tech companies.
And I had my guy put in PCast and then the URL, and it does pretty much the same thing as the ITPC, and I'm just trying to figure out what the difference is.
The difference is the PCast was an older version of the ITPC handler. Either one works.
Okay.
Either one is fine. Now, one thing you can do to make it even easier is if you send somebody an ITPC link in email, it just shows up as text. If you send people an HTTP link in their email when you're marketing a show or when it's in your email signature, it auto hyperlinks. You've probably seen this in Gmail and Outlook and things. It creates a link for you automatically just out of text. The way you do this is what's called a 301 redirect. I'll probably put a link up on the wiki rather than actually delve into the syntax of how to do that here because, well, I haven't got a lot of time. Again, remember, when you're converting people from listeners to subscribers, it all needs to be a channel. It needs to be word of mouth things that people can remember.
Yeah, I mean, having 301 redirects is a good idea still. So, for example, if you go to ChristopherSpenn.com/newsletter, it will route you to the right place. I would strongly suggest that people do that, especially with their social media channels. So, if you have a podcast show like marketingovercoffee.com, having marketingovercoffee.com/YouTube or /Facebook/whatever, and then having those things redirect the user to the appropriate place is a good idea for a couple of reasons. One, you can get better statistics by having those links be trackable. If you're using a software like Rank Math, for example, on your WordPress blog, it will keep track of the stats for you. You can use it with a link shortener if you've got your own link shortener. And critically, if you need to redirect that traffic again later, it is under your control. You don't have a gazillion links all over the web that you need to go change. You can go and change, let's say you open up a Threads account today and you want to take marketingovercoffee.com/Twitter and you just want to silently repoint that to Threads, having that redirect under your control, much easier to do that than going to all the places where people linked up your twitter.com/marketingovercoffee address and trying to get those changed. So redirects in general are something that should be always under your control, and you should be using them to make it easier to future-proof your show.
Easily. Remembering things easily when you turn a subscriber into an evangelist. If your show's URL, if your show's name is not easy for people to remember and spit back out to others, they won't refer it as easily. They'll say, yeah, go to listening-to-my-show.com. No one's going to remember that, but listen to the M Show. Listen to Newcomb Road. All these things make it easy. Make sharing your website super easy. Give tools. So have things like little chicklets say, hey, share my show. Give them the HTML to copy and paste in a little text box. A good example of this, let's see if I can make this work here. There's a website here called Bum Rush the Charts. Did I get to that side of the screen? No, I got it. All right. Worry about that later. There is a little text.
Yeah, pretty obviously. These days, any of the visuals like that, instead of clicking out, they just go in as separate slides. For a ease of presentation, it's much better off as a set of slides. But podcasts were very informal. They were very much for people to share knowledge without doing it in a polished, professional way. And you obviously can if you want to, but they were really meant for people who wanted to share something but would not be invited to speak at a different conference. And so that was really the impetus. But definitely watching this and watching me click around things does make me cringe a little bit. Like, yeah, that should have just been a slide.
Box where people can literally highlight some HTML, copy and paste it onto the MySpace page or whatever. Make it so easy for them. Give people a reason to promote your stuff. A great example is PodSafe Bands. I have a show about financial aid, which among other things sounds like the most boring thing in the world, and most of the time it is. But I do play a lot of PodSafe music from different bands, and by promoting bands, by promoting their work to your audience, in return, more times than not, they will promote your work back. They will link back to you, which is a good source of inbound links. So if you're doing a show, like a daily show or a weekly show, you can have all these other people linking to you. Make sure you leave comments on their MySpace page, on the band's MySpace page, so that their fans can find your show. I do this a lot with Uncle Seth. Stand up.
I'm not standing up. It's too much effort. I gotta save my energy.
Make your show self-contained.
The quid pro quo, probably shouldn't have named it that, but it's an accurate reflection of reality. These days we call them collabs, right? When you see audiences promote, you see shows cross promoting other shows, they're collabs, and that advice is still valid. YouTubers do that a ton. Instagram folks do that a ton. Podcasters, not as much, which has always been a bit of a mystery as to why podcasters did not do that when everyone else does that too. So I'm not sure why, but Yeah, I mean, that's still a perfectly valid tactic and one that I would encourage you to do with your show. Find ways to loop in other people who will help you promote your show. Do guest interviews. You know, one of the hallmarks of marketing over coffee is about half the shows are with guests. The guests are usually promoting their latest book or their or whatever. Well, guess what they're gonna do? Yeah, if this episode is about them and their book, of course they're going to reshare it with their community. So you want to leverage those relationships as much as possible to get your show in front of as many people as you can. And when they're on tour, their book, their new talk, their new company, whatever, and they're trying to promote like crazy, that is the best time to get them. One of the things that has always been a skill and a superpower of my partner, John Wall, on marketing over coffee is his ability to just land, top tier authors, people like Seth Godin and David Meerman Scott and the many others, because he has relationships with their publishers, because he got in early with a lot of these folks before they were mega names, and now, when they're on tour, you can get people to pretty much show up for anything, and especially when the rest of the time, they wouldn't give you the time of day, but when they're promoting their book, they will show up. All right, that's going to wrap it up for part 2. Let's take a break here for today. Thanks for tuning in, and come back the next time for part 3. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and if you want to know when new videos are available, hit the bell button to be notified as soon as new content is live.